Mr. Stroke, would you please begin the live stream?
We're rolling.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is the regularly scheduled bi-monthly meeting of the Architectural Review Board. The Review Board is a city board appointed by City Council to serve on a volunteer basis. The board is charged by city law to review new construction and exterior changes within Mobile's historic districts. Due to the necessity of following CDC guidance and local and state orders, the meeting is being conducted remotely, and the public may follow the proceedings via a live stream on the city's website. Anyone wishing to address comments to the board may either send those comments in writing by email or the U.S. Postal Service to the Historic Development Office, being sure to include one's name, home address, and the agenda item being addressed, or contact the Historic Development Office to be placed on the list of speakers in the Zoom meeting. Requests must be received by 5 p.m. on the day before the ARB meeting to ensure consideration by the board. Staff will introduce each application to the board and briefly outline the request. At that time, the chair will convene a public hearing to review the application. All comments must be addressed to the board. After comments from the applicant, the chair will ask for comments from concerned parties. Members of the public wishing to address the board in the meeting will be admitted to the meeting from the Zoom waiting room when their item of interest is announced. The concerned parties will be introduced to the board and the applicants. After comments from the applicant and concerned parties, the board will determine the appropriate action for the request. When the item of interest is concluded, the concerned parties will be returned to the Zoom waiting room. Following the meeting, staff will generate correspondence notifying the applicant of the board's actions. Appeals of the review board concerning building issues are heard by City Council. There's a 15-day period to file the notice of appeal with the city clerk. Appeals of the review board concerning signage issues are heard by the Board of Adjustment. There's a 15-day period to file the notice of appeal with the Office of Urban Development. Would the chair call the meeting to order?
It looks like it's about 3:04. I'll call the meeting to order, and would you call roll, please?
Certainly. Andre Rathley?
Here.
Jim Wagner?
Here.
Carrie Morin?
Here.
Kim Harden? Kim, you're muted.
I'm here, thank you.
You're welcome. Cart Blackwell?
Here.
Abby Davis?
Here.
Steve Stone?
Here.
Janelle Adams?
Here.
Craig Roberts?
Here.
Bob Allen?
Here.
Gypsy Van Antwerp?
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here today. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the September 1 meeting.
This is Steve. I'll make a motion to approve minutes as posted by staff.
Here's a second.
Clark, second.
All right, we have a motion to accept and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Did I hear any opposition? Okay, great.
Jim, I will move that the Architectural Review Board find that all agenda items listed for today's September 15th meeting in order to be no, I skipped that. September 15th ARB meeting be adopted as necessary for the performance of ARB's essential minimal function. Mouthful.
Second, Kim Harden.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Steve. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We can carry on with our business today. Thank you. With that being said, then I would entertain a motion regarding the mid-month COAs.
This is motion made to approve the mid-months as presented in the staff report.
Thank you, Cart. Do I hear a second?
Second, Kim Harden.
I have a motion and a second to approve the mid-months. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to move on to our first application. Christine, did we have any other applicants up here?
We do have two. We have the applicant for 714 Dolphin Street and the applicant for 9 North Royal present.
Great. Then I guess we can go with 714 Dolphin Street.
So the project that deals with 714 Dolphin Street is to construct a mural. 714 Dolphin is located 1 block just west of the junction of Dolphin Street and Spring Hill Road. And currently, as you can tell from the map, 714 Dolphin consists of 1 lot oriented in a north-south direction that runs through the entire block of the land. And it has an interesting property history if anyone is interested in that, but its earliest recorded use was for residential buildings that were replaced by the current building circa 1950. So the current building is a 1-story cement block commercial building, which has some brick accents and has been painted many times. As you see there, and as I stated, the application for this COA is to paint a mural on the rear portion of the west elevation along North Scott Street. And as you can see, the current design is to incorporate locally important iconography into the words "Welcome to Mobile." Now, according to the National Registry nomination for this district, the building is non-contributing. However, the nomination also gives the construction date for the building as 1970 rather than about 1950, which is, as I said, more likely to be the case. And if the 1950 construction date is indeed accurate, then it would fall within the building's or within the district's period of significance, which goes up until 1965. So a resurvey may find that it's a contributing building, although it's been altered. There used to be a couple additions on the back, which has been removed, as you can see from the picture. And in any case, multiple COAs previously issued show that the building has been painted several times in the past. Additionally, there are numerous murals along Dauphin Street on the west elevations of corner buildings, just like this one. So to have one here is not necessarily inconsistent with what's already going on in the neighborhood. And I can answer any questions if they exist.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Do we have someone here to speak on behalf of this application for the applicant?
Yes, Ms. Sarah Beth Bexley is here.
Welcome, Ms. Baxley. Do you have anything you would like to add or comment on regarding the application?
I don't have any comments. This is my Youth Leadership Mobile project. In collaboration with the local news, I plan to invite Mobile citizens to come help us paint it as a community mural.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions, board members?
I have a question of this building. This is Craig. On the page we got with all the photographs, I'm not questioning the mural. I'm questioning it says, one of these photographs says, view northeast to subject property west elevation, detail of existing area proposed to be painted, and infilled windows. What are the infill windows?
I can speak to that, Jim and Craig. So if you might have to zoom in on the picture. I think with the photo sheet, it ended up being pretty small. But one of the things you notice about the building, if you get up close, is that there are a few rectangles in the west wall, basically, that are, they look very much like infill, and as if there used to be some kind of void door or window there. A number of them have been bricked up, and so the masonry of the brick doesn't quite align with the cement block that is the entire thing. And so the reason
this is
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
It's a phraseology thing here.
Okay,
This has to be just to do with the way this sentence is phrased. Because if there was a comma there, I think I would have separated infill windows. So you're just pointing out that this is the elevation with the infilled windows.
correct. And
There's
also
not a
pointing
project
out
to be painted and infilled windows.
and also pointing out the existence of the infills to convey the alterations that have been
Yeah,
made
well, I mean,
over
there,
time to the
I'm sorry, I would have understood that sentence if it had a comma after painted. That's the only thing. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Okay. Any other board members have questions or comments? Christine, do you know if there's anyone else that's called in about this application, or did we receive anything?
We have not received any written public comment, and no one contacted us to speak in this meeting.
Okay, great. That being said, then ask the board if there's a motion to accept the facts as presented in the application.
Make a motion, we find facts as written by staff.
Is there a
Second.
second? Have a motion and a second to accept the facts as written by staff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the facts are accepted. Do I
I
hear a
make a
motion?
motion, we find this application does not impair the historic integrity of the neighborhood or the building and be granted a COA.
Second, Kim Harden.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Kim. And second, all in favor?
The dog seconded
Aye.
it.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Just the dog.
All right. Thank you all and congratulations. The staff will be in touch with you regarding your certificate of appropriateness. Thank you.
That's gonna look great. That's great. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Who's next, Christine? Which application?
This is 9 North Royal. I would like to announce that, of course, Ms. Davis must recuse herself from this application because she's the applicant. And Ms. Van Antwerp has also notified me that she must recuse herself from consideration of this application.
Okay. And we still have a quorum with that.
We do. Yes, we do.
Christine,
Okay.
are we doing the Flint Street today? Are we doing this one?
I don't believe the applicant for that item is here. John, have you heard from Mr. Deese regarding this?
I have not.
Okay.
He is not here.
Then I'll go ahead and leave at this point. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Gypsy.
Bye-bye.
So the board has already considered this application at a previous meeting. It does involve construction of a wall and fencing with gate at and a freestanding ATM at 9 North Royal Street, which is currently a vacant lot between a parking garage and a row of buildings along the west side of Royal Street. The design guidelines state that the visual impact of parking in a historic district should be minimized by locating the parking area to the rear or the side of the structure, and using landscaping to screen such parking. The parking spaces in this case would be screened from the view from Royal Street by the proposed 8-foot fence / wall with 10-foot columns intervening. The design guidelines currently don't really take into consideration this type of situation. They only allow for 3 to 4 foot fencing at the front of a property, especially along a street. However, if you consider the context of this property within a commercial district and consider the front planes of the structures on the north and south sides of this lot, which are right at the right-of-way line along the sidewalk, you can consider that the guidelines also in commercial districts state that creating compatible patterns and rhythms of architectural features in new commercial construction along the streets is critical. And while this is not a new building, this would help to fill in the gap-toothed appearance of this lot on North Royal Street. It would create a sense of continuous streetscape along the block. So the fencing permitted by Chapter 10 of the guidelines, which is 3 to 4 feet, would not serve to effectively screen the parking area, which is a goal of the guidelines, on the interior of the lot, and it wouldn't restore any sense of a continuous streetscape, whereas the proposed fencing and short wall would help to restore some sense of a continuous streetscape in this location. Therefore, staff believes the proposed construction of a screening wall and fence with freestanding ATM and an aluminum gate at the sidewalk edge of the subject property would not impair the architectural character of the surrounding district, and staff recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed 8-foot fence/wall with 10-foot intervening columns.
Great. Abby, you're representing this application?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay, just wanted to see if you had further comments you wanted to make to the board.
I just wanted to reiterate what I wrote in my little application letter, which is that unlike other design codes, we are here to interpret and grant appropriateness for these applications based on guidelines. So I think, I mentioned that we have to also take into account local characteristics and local goals, which is what the Secretary of Interior Standards says. So I would implore us to consider that. I think last time I presented, it was a little difficult for us to figure out how, or some board members to figure out how they could approve something that was not specifically addressed in the code. And I think this information can help with that. So I do think the local context is what's really important here, and trying to screen the parking, not trying to comply with a 3-foot code that is really more for a residential context.
This is Steve. I just have a question. We have A 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. It looks like 3 different options. Are we, as staff recommended, approval of A 3.1, the tallest one of the 3, which is what came to the last board meeting?
Yes, in light of the consideration of the commercial context of the block rather than the more residential context that seems to be entertained by the fencing portion of the design guidelines, yes, staff is recommending approval of that option.
Yeah, in our last meeting, Katarina had recommended going ahead and show.
He's on the phone right now. To do a conference call, so I'll try Christine to get him in.
Yeah, I much prefer the new options, but it sounds like it's what, I mean, for my 2 cents, but I think we're setting a bad precedent with this. And I think we spent 2 weeks thinking of an excuse why to approve it. But that's fine. That's my 2 cents.
I have a comment as well on 3.2, the 8-foot overall. To me, it appears much more in proportion and less institutional, like you're fencing off, something you don't want people to get to. So I think I'm agreeing with you on the height there, Steve, but
Yeah,
I
I
think
much
the
prefer the second one.
yeah, that it is much more in proportion with the surrounding, I think, and for what it is.
And honestly, part of my comment, I guess, is fatigue of all of the little roof structures and this thing and all these things just to house ATMs downtown, which has become crazy in the last couple of years. And it's just, it might be a necessary banking amenity, but it sure is very mausoleum-like to me, I think, as I said last time. But
Yeah, and part of that is because you can't, there's no freestanding ATM allowed based on the DDD code. So we have to somehow enclose that due to that code, which I think the lower one does in a more of a discrete manner, like you're talking about. And we're open to that one. I personally like the proportions of the taller one, and it allows us to do just some different lighting and close it off more like what you're saying. And just to me, I like the proportions because those other two buildings are so tall on either side. But we're open to the 8 foot, and that's what the CRC requires. So we're showing that option as well as a consideration. So I don't want to withdraw this today. I want to come to some kind of agreement and have everyone on board with it that's on the boards, and then we're going to move forward with the CRC application. So if that's something that y'all prefer, then we're open to that. I still prefer the other one, but that's why I included the options so that you could see them. I definitely do not prefer that 4 foot option. I think it's just taking away from the urban context.
Abby, can I ask a question regarding the ATM? Am I correct? There's an ATM in the building that's next to this, and now there's going to be a second ATM with this freestanding one?
I think that's a separate thing.
No, that's a separate building, and also that bank is no longer occupying that building, and so that ATM is now boarded up. But they were able to put that in the building. That building lobby is very different than ours. If you go back and look at our front elevation, we only have the doors and the 1 bay window into our bank branch. So if we took that whole window, we would really be hurting for light, and we would be taking a lot away from the historical nature of that facade.
Okay.
We don't have the kind of obvious choice of ATM at the building like the other Bank of the Ozarks had.
This is Kim. I may be missing a drawing or photo, but in other cases where we've reviewed ATMs being added, we've gotten detailed information about how the ATM looks, based on having no plastic on it and things like that. So I just wondered if I had missed something or if we were looking at those aspects today.
No, I did not provide the actual ATM spec. That's not here.
Yeah, I believe it was All In Credit Union that you're thinking of, Kim, that had the red, white, and blue signs on all over their ATMs that we looked at a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. So would this be a situation where y'all would submit, what the ATM looked like directly to Christine maybe, and any other signage at a later point?
Yeah, yes, we could
Okay.
supply that.
That'd be great.
And ATM is set back. So if you look in plan, it is set back a little bit, but we can certainly provide the info so y'all can see it.
And it looks like it's freestanding, so it's really not the same as the built-in ones that we have kind of a purview over.
All right. Any other?
Jim, this is Bob Allen. I've got something I'd like to say.
Yes, sir.
I don't object to the project, and I understand the intent, but I'm concerned about how the ARB is being asked to justify the approval of the project. The staff report states that the project is not approvable under the fencing guideline, which we all recognize as deficient. But the staff report suggests that the ARB consider the project under the guidelines that are applicable to new commercial building construction, although this clearly isn't a new commercial building. That is, I'm afraid the ARB is being asked to compensate for deficiencies in the guidelines by ignoring the admittedly applicable guideline in favor of a guideline that admittedly is not applicable to the project. Each time the guidelines are ignored, they become less important and less effective, and the actions of the ARB become more arbitrary. And if there is anything that the ARB and other design review boards, if there's anything they can't be, is arbitrary. And I'm afraid that that's where we're headed.
And
Understood.
I agree with Bob. And he said it much
May
more.
I-
eloquently than
Can you hear me?
Yes, Craig?
Okay. I agree with what Bob and Steve are saying there. However, it's come up several times over the last year that our guidelines should be more specific in that we have varying types of historic districts. And in this case, we're in a commercial historic district. And it seems to me that the fencing rules should maybe be different than in residential historic districts. And therefore, you know, this would be one of those instances. So I think that's what the staff has considered for us to make an exception. If we were to approve this as it is, and I believe that's with 8 feet to the top of the fence, but the columns are 10 feet tall. Is that correct? As it
That's
stands?
correct. Yes.
Is
that's
that
the
correct
one.
as it stands?
Craig, they're
Uh,
saying, yeah, Craig, yes.
Abby, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, you know, since really most of our historic districts are residential, this is an exception. So I think that's what staff was doing, is making an exception. And it is important for us to not be arbitrary. And Bob and Steve, I agree with what you said, but if we have often made exceptions, and as long as we verbalize that, I believe that's my next question though, is if the staff has already verbalized that, do we have to reassert that in our facts or our decision for an approval of an application? In which case, you know, I think it's okay. Because in this case, I think this as presented would look and be just fine because it's sandwiched into large commercial buildings, you know, so this goes back to us. Of course, it takes forever to review our ordinance and to get anything changed. I think it took 12 years last time. But nonetheless, if we make an exception, I think it would be fine.
This is
But it
Clark.
needs to be a clear exception. And the reason would be just what I said, is that this is a heavily commercialized district, 2 big buildings, and it's connecting the 2 big buildings. So it's different from a residential area. As long as that's said.
Yes.
Cart,
This is-
would you
Yeah.
to say
Thank
something?
you, Jim. This addresses both Bob's concern, very valid about being arbitrary and capricious, and Craig's comments. The first thing is that would be the guidelines. It wouldn't be the ordinance changing, but the guidelines changing. And in
Well, that's what I meant. Thank you.
previous instances where we've had an application like this, where there is a contextual situation that it is not embraced by the guidelines, and generally it's because they're rarefied instances. How many vacant lots do we have in the central core of the city between the 4th or 5th tallest building in the state and a traditional building like this, where previously when you have an application like this, it notes that while there is impairment in the recommendation for reasons blank, blank, and blank, that might be a way which we can address the staff's realization of This is a unique situation, and while at the same time, as Bob has said, and we all realize, defending the guidelines. So by noting that while the application impairs, then the various reasons why this is an instance, it allows us to uphold the guidelines while authorizing valid reasons of why this should be approved. And it's just something we can hang our hat on legally and ethically down the road when there is not such an instance where the context call for something like this.
Thank you, Cart.
Yes. I just want to reiterate too, the powers and duties of this board, the ARB, they even say when we're deciding what gets a certificate of appropriateness and what is appropriate, it shall be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards, taking into account local characteristics and local goals. And if we want to be very local in this case, we're not talking about just the overall historic districts in general, but this street, this location, this context. And I think that does give us some latitude as a board. And that's written in the code where the board is given its powers, the ARB. So I think that further legitimizes it. I mean, that we're taking into account what is locally appropriate at this location.
All right.
Okay, are we ready?
Any other comments or questions by board members? Christine, did we receive any comments from the public regarding this application?
No, we did not receive any written comments, and no one contacted the office to speak at this meeting.
Okay. I'm going to address this to the board and to Abby representing the application. And did I understand, it sounded like there was a desire to have the columns as well as the fence at 8 feet rather than the columns being at 10 feet and the fence at 8 feet. Am I correct about that? Regarding the board, sounded like Steve, Kim, I'll ask you.
No. You can't look at the cap on top of the columns. You can't make both the same height. The column has to be higher than the fence or it's not going to look right at all.
Craig, I'm just asking if that's what Kim and Steve were saying at this point, and then I'll be happy to hear what you have to say to the board.
What I was reviewing was the A 3.2 sheet, which shows a difference of a foot between the top of the masonry and the top of the fence. And the height, the overall height of the masonry was 8 feet and the fence was 7. That was my preference from a proportional standpoint.
Okay. Is that consistent with your thoughts, Steve? I know it sounds generally, if this were to go forward, was that your thought as well, Steve?
I mean, honestly, like out of A 3.1 and 3.2, I prefer A 3.2. That being said, per Bob's, not criticism, but just a statement that it still doesn't meet. And, if we're just going to do things on it's a super special context this one time, and we're going to do things on an as basis needed, then neither fit. And so I'm going to be a no either way. So
one other comment I had is that I believe at 8 feet for the very type height, it is in compliance with a fence abutting another commercial. So that was my thought on that particular aspect too.
This is a question for the staff. If there's a motion to accept facts, does that motion need to specify which one of these two options the board is considering?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like we have, how many board members are on this call?
I see Craig, I see Cart, I see me, Kim.
I believe it's 10. Yeah, it's 10. And then minus Abby, that's 9 would be voting.
Got it.
I have a question. This is Steve regarding CRC, and I know you said you were going to go to CRC after this, I believe.
Well, we're submitting for a variance. We've already had to make that application. We've already submitted it, and we've submitted it at the height and requested a variance.
So that's from BZA, right? And so, but what about CRC? Or are they just going to go along contingent with a variance?
CRC, no, they said if we went higher than the 8 feet, we had to request a variance.
Okay.
So that's the current path we're on is requesting
8 feet
a
for
variance.
the fence or 8 feet for the columns?
They want the tallest anything to be 8 feet. So that is what the 832 shows. The 831 shows what we're trying to request as a variance, which is 10 feet for the columns, 8 feet for the fence.
Gotcha.
Per screen. Yeah.
Craig, Craig, I believe you had another comment. I didn't want to end this to get opportunity if you did.
I thought I was put in the corner real quick.
No, I just wanted to make sure that the board understood we needed to make a selection of these two if there's going to be a finding of fact on this application. So I did not.
I'm going to vote yes on either one. So there.
Okay.
Do whatever y'all want to do.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Then
Are there any comments from other board members? I mean, we've had some very vocal view, and so I don't, I'd like to, I could switch one to the other. I prefer to keep the 10 feet, but again, I do not want to pull this again, or, I'm trying to work with everyone being on board. I know some people are not going to get on board with this, and I understand that, but if there's any other comments, they would be appreciated.
Well, I would simply say that when it comes to my vote, I believe that Bob and Steve have made some valid points regarding the integrity of our guidelines. And while recognizing they don't address every situation, and and I appreciate the fact the scale of this is trying to meet those buildings, but I'm having a hard time personally as one board member reconciling it with what the guidelines do provide. That's my only comment. I like the design. I like what you're trying to do. I'm just having a hard time reconciling it. And I appreciate the additional information you brought forward to us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think that Cart's comments were spot on.
Right. Okay. If there's nothing more regarding the specifics of the application, then I will entertain a motion regarding the facts of the application, bearing in mind that whoever is going to make such a motion needs to, as I understand it from staff, select whichever version that the application is put before us that the board wants to vote on.
I move we amend the facts to show an 8-foot version, the A 3.2, to be voted on by the board.
Second.
You have a motion and a second regarding the facts. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to the finding of the facts as presented?
I oppose.
One in opposition. Thank you. And so now we're talking about the one with the 8-foot option. So with that, I'll entertain a motion regarding a certificate of appropriateness.
Well, I'll make a motion. This application as presented as by facts does not impair the historic integrity of the neighborhood the neighborhood, with the understanding that this is an exception being made to the guidelines in view of the fact that this is a densely commercial area with two large buildings abutting the property. Period.
Could I amend that to say that this is being treated more like a facade than a actual fence structure, potentially? Y'all could say no.
And the board is perceiving this more as a facade along the street as opposed to a fence structure. Period.
For treating it as a facade, it's definitely not approvable. I wouldn't use that lexicon.
Okay, well, take
Back
the
that
rest.
out.
Yeah.
And go back to my last period.
That makes it even worse.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second to Craig's motion?
I second, it's Kim.
Kim has seconded, so we have a motion to approve it for a COA in a second. I think we probably need to make sure we understand what the count of the votes are. If we just say yes or no, we may not get an accurate number. So I guess, Christine, I'd ask you to ask each board member so you can get an accurate count.
Andre,
I vote yes.
Jim,
I vote no.
Carrie,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Janelle,
No.
Craig,
Yes.
Bob,
No.
by one vote, the yeses have it.
Okay. All right. Abby, we're good to go with the COA with the 8-foot option.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know this is a really tough one. Thank you all for your input. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your effort on it too. We know it's not easy for you, so thank you. All right. Did I understand Flint Street is here or is not? You're not going to be able to make it, is that right?
Mr. Deese has arrived. He is on my office phone and I'm going to put him on speaker now.
Okay, great.
Mr. Deese, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Can you all hear Mr. Deese?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Mr. Sludge?
Yes, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
All right, this is 415 Flint Street. It's a contributing building in the Lioncoff Historic District, but the structure under consideration today is an ancillary building, a carport garage in the rear of the property, and the applicant wants to demolish it. Here you can see its location in Lioncoff, southern reaches. Unfortunately, the garage isn't really specified in the nomination of the historic district nomination, so we don't know a whole lot about it. It was built about 1950 and had some subsequent things done to it. The roof is currently in a failing condition. You can see it's brick veneer. A lot of the openings are in bad shape, and it's in generally poor condition. This is the site plan that the owner submitted. Of course, the top view, you see it with the garage apartment in the back, and then the bottom view, they propose simply removing it and not building anything in its place, just planting grass, leaving it informally landscaped. And so the staff recommends, given the fact that this is not a unique kind of ancillary building in the district, we're recommending approval and do not believe that its removal would impair the integrity of the district.
Great. Thank you, John. Mr. Dees, do you have anything you would like to add to the board?
Sir?
Do you have anything you would like to add in addition to what the staff has reported?
I can't hardly hear you. Say that I have anything to add?
That's
Yes,
correct.
sir.
Yes, sir.
No, ma'am. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Board members, you have any questions or comments? Christine, did we receive any comments from the public?
We did not.
Thank you. If the board has no questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion to find facts.
Excuse me, I have one question, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Sure.
Okay,
go ahead,
thank
Karen.
you. Mr. Dees, is it your intent anytime in the future to rebuild an ancillary structure in the back? Do you have
Mr.
plans?
Dees, I'm sorry if you didn't hear that. The question is there any intention to rebuild an ancillary structure behind the house?
No, ma'am. He gonna just use it for parking. He's not gonna build anything else back there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to find facts as written. This is Steve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept facts as written. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Entertain a motion regarding a COA.
This is Steve again. I'll make a motion that the project application does not impair the historic integrity of the building or district and should be granted a COA.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to grant a certificate of appropriateness. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes and a COA will be issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dees.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
I believe that's the last item on our agenda. Is there anything else, Christine?
I do not have anything further.
Christine, I had one question about 809 government. Did that appeal ever come up? I didn't see it on the city agenda.
The appeal has been made. City Council has not yet scheduled their hearing of it. My guess is that they will hold it until after the runoffs.
Okay.
Anything
Can you
else?
alert the board when that is up for appeal? I'd like to follow it.
I certainly will, and we will need someone from the board to be present at that City Council meeting, please.
All right.
Christine, I have a question about the Bienville Square redesign committee meeting that was yesterday.
Yes.
It got rescheduled to 1:30, and I believe I was the only representative that made it to that teleconference at 1:30. Is that?
Yeah, I was unable to make it.
Okay. Well,
I actually read. I got in after 8 days away and read that email at 1:52. So I clearly missed far too much of that meeting, and I was busy with something else. I was like, well, I can't make this meeting now.
Well, we didn't miss much as far as the design is concerned, but they did mention that the DD package had been released like September 7th. And I don't know if you shared it with the ARB committee members, but I haven't seen it. I know I was out with COVID, so I may be missing the email or something, but can you resend it or reissue it if you have?
Yeah, I haven't passed it on. I didn't know if you and Craig and Katarina had received it. I certainly will send it out this afternoon. Craig, do you need
no
it?
hurry. Just when you can.
Do you need the 100% DDD package for Bienville Square, Craig?
That would be nice.
I will send it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn and we'll be gone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I think we're adjourned.